Reality shows were a huge conversation this year, and today we're gonna go through some of my favorite stories that I've covered on my channel this year, and they're all pretty different from the top 10 stories that we covered yesterday. Tomorrow videos will resume back to normal, but I figured for the last couple days of the year, I'd get on camera and we'd recap the year together. Now, I love reality television, and I watched a lot of it growing up, a lot of the family-oriented reality shows that were on the air, especially if they were on TLC, and that is a lot of the stories that we covered this year. We talked about the Duggars, we talked about the Gosselin family, we also talked about Dance Moms. There was a lot of reality stars that came forward this year to talk about their experience being on those shows. So we're gonna go through some of the reality show stars that have come out to talk about things this year, plus some other stories that were my personal favorites. First, let's talk about Dance Moms because I made quite a few videos talking about it. It really has become one of my favorite stories to cover whenever new information is released about what it was like to be on the show and all the behind the scenes stories about everything that went down, plus where all the relationships stand today. If you watch the show, then I feel like you guys get it, that it's just so interesting to watch these girls come out and talk about everything that happened. I covered it once this year, and then I started seeing more and more of the girls talk about things as well as their moms. Christy, Melissa, Kenzie, Maddie, JoJo, Kalani, Kendall, Abby even talked about Dance Moms this year on YouTube. They talked about how the producers were to how they feel looking back on their experience and what they took with them from it, both good and bad. When Maddie spoke out, that was pretty big. She never likes to talk about Dance Moms, and even still in this, she never said Abby's name while she was interviewed by Emrata. She only referenced her as her dance teacher, but she did talk about trying to undo toxic traits and ways of thinking that she learned as a result of Abby.
It's honestly a struggle every day that I deal with. Not every day, but like even now I'm really trying to unpack like all of those, like my thought process when I was younger, also through my dance teacher, was like, you have to be the best. If you don't win, you're not good. And so that was like the mentality when I was so little, and I was such a perfectionist and I was so hard on myself, and now I'm trying to unlearn all those traits.
Abby Lee eventually even came out in an interview with Sophia with an F talking about being on Dance Moms and responded to Maddie coming out and talking about her experience. And she felt like Maddie was brainwashed.
You know, we all remember things differently.
Yeah.
Some memory that you have that was awful for you as a teenager, somebody else was at that same party or that same place and it was wonderful for them.
Yep.
So that just depends. I hugged that kid so close and so tight to my body while her mother and dad were screaming obscenities at each other. Mm-hmm. Buying her first pair of point shoes for her birthday. Was she brainwashed? Does she not remember? Did she go to like some place where they like erase your memory? Like, how do you not remember all of that?
Maddie also opened up about her mom apologizing to her about the things that happened on the show and how she was made to feel and everything.
Last year, my mom, I was having a really bad panic attack, and I called my mom, and things were coming up from the past, and she apologized to me, and she was like, I'm so sorry that I put you through that. And it's so sad because it's like, she would never want to hurt us.
Of course.
But none of us knew how crazy it would get.
We heard so many stories about how the producers were and the way that they got these moms to kind of fight and argue for entertainment value. And obviously we know that reality television isn't always giving us a real clear picture of everything that's going on. It's not all real. There's storylines and fabrication to make it interesting because it's TV after all. But for this show to have happened so long ago and to still be very relevant enough to where people want to keep up with the girls and know where they are and follow them, it's just wild to see. And I think that the timing of me covering Dance Moms is so interesting because they did end up having a reunion this year. So that was just one of the stories that I really liked covering this year. The other one has to do with the Duggar family. This year, Jill spoke out as well as Ginger, both doing interviews revealing so much about their life growing up on reality television, revealing that their parents fell into Bill Gothard's teachings of basic life principles and how harmful the teachings ended up being for their family. And this was something that I found really interesting because I watched the Duggars back in the day. I remember being like a kid and watching them expand their family year after year after year. Michelle was just always pregnant. went. And I knew that they were religious, but I really didn't know what they were exactly following. And so to hear the kids come out and speak out now about what it was like growing up in this household and the actual things that they were being taught and how they were living, it's really interesting to hear about, and also just so sad that this was their reality for so long. A series also came out this year called Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets. Jill and her husband were included in it, as well as Jim Bob's sister, her daughter Amy, former family friends, journalists, YouTuber Fundy Friday, and former members of IBLP, as they spoke out in the series about Bill Gothard and how the Duggars became the poster child for IBLP. Jill Duggar also came out with a memoir this year called Counting the Costs, where she was exposing her family for the way they controlled and manipulated her over the years. Jill was in over 200 episodes of the family show and in 24 specials with her family, and saw no money from any of it until she confronted her dad. She wrote in her book that she received $175,000 after she confronted her dad about it, but that is nothing compared to what her parents probably made over the years filming this show. Like $175,000, 200 episodes. It's not making sense. Plus, some of those episodes were her own episodes where she was getting married and giving birth, and she didn't see any money from that. At least not until she confronted her dad, but that is just so sad. Jill also opened up about how her parents protected her brother Josh and how she confronted her dad about making her feel bad and treating her worse than Josh, even after all that he did. The fact that her dad was still making her feel bad about herself for the littlest things, like wearing pants and getting a nose ring. Like, your son is behind bars because he did things that are unspeakable. And you're mad because your daughter's wearing pants and she has a nose ring, and you want to be more hard on her. At least you want her to feel like you're being more tough on her than her brother, who is behind bars. In covering the Duggar family, it's just been really nice to see that these kids have grown up and been able to stand up to Michelle and Jim Bob, and they've been able to find themselves and are expressing it. And these two very much had their kids under this spell of listen to your parents or bad things would happen to you, like going to hell. There was a lot of fear-based parenting happening in that household that we have heard come out over the years as more of the Duggar kids have chosen to speak out. But I think for anybody that watched this show back in the day, it really is just so wild to see how everything has unfolded with each member of the family as they've gotten older. Now, the next story was the Gosselin family. This year, a lot was revealed about them. For those who watched John and Kate Plus 8, it's been quite the year since John spoke out, as well as Hannah and Colin. This year, Vice dug a little deeper into the behind the scenes of this family in their series that they did titled Dark Side of the 2000s. I made a video talking about how John was opening up about his divorce from Kate and how the network wanted to keep them together for the show. And he also addressed a lot that had come out about him in the press following his divorce from Kate, saying that he reverted back to being a 19-year-old going out and partying, and his actions put their TLC family-friendly image at risk. Colin was also interviewed in the Vice series, saying that he feels as though his parents had different views of television and that their dad wanted them to have a normal life and a normal childhood. And he also opened up about his mom sending him to a behavioral institute for multiple years. He said that he felt like his behavior wasn't any different from his other siblings and how they would act, but he felt like his mom just needed someone to take her anger and frustration out on. In 2017, Colin wrote a letter to John with an address to the institution he was at and asked for help. And Hannah opened up that the day that she found out about what was going on with Colin, she did not want to go back home with Kate. John ended up spending millions of dollars trying to get Colin out of the institute, and he also got custody of Hannah as well, as she did not want to live with her mom anymore. After the series was released, Maddie, who is one of their older daughters, ended up responding to this situation, calling out Colin and explaining her reasons for not being in touch with him. Kate later addressed it on Instagram, saying that for the safety of her family, she had Colin placed in a facility and stated that she believes he remains troubled. For anyone who watched the show back in the day, this was truly just so sad to see, to a family everyone once loved, and for them to be torn apart and not on good terms at all is just really hard to see. I think all of these stories of being on reality television just say a lot, and they are so interesting to cover just because I feel like so many people feel like they know these people, right? Like they grew up watching the girls on Dance Moms, they know them, or they know the Duggars because they saw them on TV, or they know John and Kate plus 8 and all the kids, but you really don't know them. And they've said so many times that the producers manipulate things and the storylines just aren't as they seem. And in the Duggar household, there were so many dark secrets that they were holding behind them. And so it really is just a lot when you sit and hear them talk about everything from their perspective, which is why these are some of the stories that I've really enjoyed covering, just hearing firsthand what it was like. But besides reality television stars speaking out about their experiences, there are two other stories that I really enjoyed talking about this year or just find fascinating. One is Coachella, just because I went to Coachella and it's always a really fun time. I feel like that part of the year, the festival time, you never know what's going to happen, and there's always something that's going down at Coachella. That was a really fun time for me to be reporting. And this year, just so much was being talked about at that time. There were rumors of Kylie Jenner and Timothée Chalamet dating, which we now know to be true. Coachella was also when Kendall Jenner and Bad Bunny were starting to get together and they just broke up. So, once you see what's being talked about at the beginning of the year and then what's going on at the end of the year, things just are so different. There was also Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello having a little reunion at Coachella. And speaking of reunions, Tana Mongeau and James Charles also had a reunion at Coachella, and they seemingly squashed their beef as well during this time and agreed to be civil. And then there was the whole Frank Ocean drama because his performance was not what people were hoping for, and he ended up not even doing Weekend 2. So Coachella was just a fun one to cover, and I'm going this year, so I'm excited to see what is in store for us that we are going to be seeing this year. But finally, the next story that isn't really just like one story that I made a video on, but kind of just an evolution almost of content that I've made, is that Trisha Paytas has had this total reputation just transformation in a way. I feel like there's still a lot of people who don't necessarily love her, but Trisha really has had this major comeback this year. I feel like once everything went down with Colleen and their podcast didn't work out and she started her own podcast, things really turned around for her, and people love the Just Trish podcast. They are waiting to see her takes on pop culture topics. They're waiting to see her interviews. People are obsessed with her. She's like literally popping off. It's like her prime right now or something. And it's just crazy because I feel like every year it's something different with her. Just a couple years ago, people were just ripping her apart, hating on her. She was getting in trouble all the time. And now suddenly everyone is eating up every video that she's posting everywhere. But I want to know what you guys liked this year that was covered. If you had a favorite story or topic, let me know in the comments. This year has truly been like one of my favorites, and I can't wait for 2024 and to see all that it is going to bring. I love you guys so much. Happy New Year, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.